shouldn't lie here really. This moss is fairy ground by right.
The whole atmosphere and the freedom, we were like in a world of our own. The trees, and you couldn't even think that there would be an outside world.
But the outside world was never far away. The collapse of the coal industry brought in its wake mass unemployment. The coal owners held the whip hand. The smallest failing meant the sack, and dismissal meant destitution. 2 protracted strikes in 1921 and 1926 broke the spirit of the miners. Their fight was for a living wage. Instead, the owners offered lower wages and longer hours.
And of course the trouble was, the miner had to have his back right to the wall before he could fight, because miners those days in the forest were 2 a penny. There was no alternative. Well, hardly anybody could get alternative work, so he had to eat humble pie all the time. But there were times when the conditions got so bad, it really was beyond, and it was terrible for the men. They were willing to work, they were willing to go down the mines, and when they come home, they hadn't got enough to keep their wives and children, not in the very simple basics. And that's all they wanted, I mean, was to give us poor bellies. And I can remember once they tried to put the miners' wages down, and they really had enough, and they stuck out. And I remember after a time the men didn't go back, and the bosses and the representatives had a meeting for all the men to go to. And I remember these men and on the platform really telling the men off. And I remember looking at my dad, looking up at him, and he looked round at people, and I can sort of see him now, and the look of absolute compassion in my father's eyes. And he waited, and he put up his hand, and he started to ask them questions. And he really shamed them. The atmosphere completely changed. I saw my dad, he discomforted them. They didn't know what to do. And you could feel the people realizing that they got a spokesman, you know. And the meeting ended up that the men decided they would keep on strike despite the terribleness of the conditions, you know. Well, things got so tough that I think the plight of the miners got through, you know, to other parts of the country, and there were quite a few people who were very sympathetic to the miners, and there was some scheme got up that people would take miners' children to ease the burdens of our parents, you know, for a stay. And I noticed, I think, from what I heard from the other girls who went away, they were mostly working class people. I'd been quite ill with scarlet fever, and I was pretty run down. So I was one from quite a lot of us from roundabouts who was taken to London, where there were people who were willing to take us into their homes. Of course, when we got into Paddington Station, I didn't recognize it as a station. I expected to come into a little station like I'd been used to, like Drybrook Court, which is just a little wooden building. But when we got inside this huge place, I couldn't see any station. All I could see was masses of trains coming and going, and people shouting and noise. It was like another world. And I kept on thinking to myself, London, London, I'm in London. This is Paddington Station. Girls would go away, but they were almost unrecognizable when they came back. And, you know, we were a bit awestruck by them. You know, the girls we played a bit older than us, but they'd put on weight, they'd grown. And of course, they were dressed up in new clothes from top to bottom, and very often lost a little bit of their forest accents. And of course, they used to walk around the village to show their finery off.
Look, there's Molly Black here coming over
lovely. When I do go to circus, I should buy me a dress like that. You can have shoes and have stockings she'd be wearing.
Why don't I speak to us?
Of course I will.
Hello, Molly.
Hello. Wish you like best, Molly. Up in London or back worm.
Back worm. London's all houses and shops and streets and crowds of people. Lady lives squashed up. They've had to build tunnels to run trains through. You've been to see Buckingham Palace? No, I haven't found it yet.
What do you do on your day off then?
We'd go to the pictures. Only it's much better pictures than down here. And my missus has got a gramophone. They play tunes I never heard before. I can help maybe cleaning the brasses at night and pretend I'd be on the stage dancing Black Bottom.
My aunt's in tours in Bristol. We get a ticket to go and see Dad's called Palo there.
I reckon London's a cut above Bristol. If I'd had the money, I could have gone to see people like Faye Compton and Edna Best in real life.
I was very lucky when I was about 10. I was put very prematurely up into the top form, which was taught by Miss Hale. She had to take 4 classes somehow, and she was marvellous. All she seemed to be concerned with was your mind and your possibilities. And she treated me, it seemed for the first time in school at any rate, like a person. Of course, even so, although Miss Hale was so marvellous to me, I didn't expect anything like the treat she gave me on my 14th birthday when I left school. She just told me to come to school tidy the next day and to bring my best friend. We stayed behind after school and we waited a bit. And then up comes this car. You can imagine what we felt like getting in a car. Miss Sarah lived, I suppose, about 2 miles away. Of course, cars didn't go that fast in those days, but we really felt we were somebody sat behind Miss Hale and that driver. When we stopped at her house, we thought it was much bigger and grander than we expected. We got out of the car and she said something to the driver. We stood aside politely while she spoke to him, then indoors we went. She took us into a lovely room. I suppose it was the dining room. And there was a most beautiful spread on the table. I had never seen anything like it.
Winifred, you sit that side.
It looked to me as though it was good enough to have been set out for the Queen. The tablecloth was laced. You couldn't see much of the lace because Miss Hale had got ham and jellies and tin fruit and fancy cakes and all sorts of things covering it.
Now, do you like ham?
I expect so, yes.
Well, I'm sure you both like bacon. This is only lean bacon, boiled instead of fried. There. Now help yourself to tomatoes and bread and butter.
It was almost a pity to untidy that table. It looked so posh to us. But Miss Hale said, come on, girls, sit up and eat. And because she was our schoolmistress, we did. And we ate, and we ate, and we ate. And the more we ate, the more she shoved it onto us.
Do you like tea?
Miss Hale had a maid to bring in the tea and wait on us. It was a girl I knew by sight, but she looked so posh in her black dress and white cap and apron, I wasn't sure whether I ought to smile at her or not. But I risked it, And she gave me a nice smile back. After tea, Miss Hill told us the car was back at the gate again and she was going to take us to the pictures. It was better in a way than Cinderella. We didn't go to a ball, but she took us to see a picture called Ben-Hur. Well, it was absolutely marvellous. Dolly and I sat there, we cried and laughed. We were so sorry for the galley slaves in their big boats. We got all in a sweat in the chariot race in case Raymond Navarro didn't win the race. When the picture was over, oh, I fell in love with Raymond Navarro. I forgot the boy I was going on at school. It was Raymond Navarro from now on. It was a marvellous life for children in the forest. We had stones and sticks, grass to sit on, trees to climb up, water to dabble in. These boys were really like young animals, you know. They were lucky. They could climb trees, kick tins. If they didn't have a football, but they could play kick the tin, you know. Lovely life, absolutely free. And then, come 14, they had to go down the pit. And then you see these boys coming over from pit. They look completely different, covered in pit dirt, you know, coming up there struggling without pit clothes on. It was, and, you know, it seemed so queer to see them. You knew then they'd grown up. When I left the forest to go to service, I was absolutely heartbroken. Being treated at once as a second-class citizen. You had no one to love, you know. You in a way lost your personality, I suppose.